My name is Rose Miller. I am 24 years old. I live in Chicago now, but part of me is still that 14-year-old girl who watched her world fall apart. The memory is sharp, not faded like some people expect after 10 years. I can still smell the faint trace of my mom's perfume when she leaned over to hug me goodbye. Her embrace felt half-hearted, distracted, like she was already somewhere else. That somewhere else was Rick Johnson. Rick was a man in his late 30s, all charm and swagger. He made my mother laugh in a way I hadn't heard in years, but beneath his smile I saw calculation. He didn't hide that he wanted her without the burden of a teenage daughter. My mom pretended it wasn't true, but kids know. We sense what adults try to dress up in polite lies. The day she told me, I sat at our chipped wooden kitchen table. Clock ticked too loudly above us, every second marking the collapse of my childhood. "Rose," she began softly, "Rick and I are moving in together." I blinked. "Okay, so we'll all move?" She looked down at her hands. "No, sweetheart. He thinks it's best if it's just us for now. You'll stay here." I remembered choking on my own breath. The words scrambled in my head, turning to knives. "You're leaving me?" My voice cracked. "Not leaving," she whispered. "Just giving us a chance. You're strong, Rose. You'll manage." Strong. She used that word like it was a gift, but it was a curse. I was 14, barely able to navigate algebra, and suddenly I was supposed to navigate abandonment. That night I packed a small duffel bag with the essentials, jeans, a hoodie, and a toothbrush, because some part of me still believed she would come back the next morning ashamed of herself. But she didn't. I woke up to silence, her closet empty, her scent lingering faintly like a ghost. The loneliness crept in quickly. Dinner became cereal eaten straight from the box. The house, once filled with her humming while she cooked, was now quiet, except for the creaks of old floorboards and my own muffled sobs into the pillow. I'd never realized how much security her presence gave me until it was ripped away. At school, I put on a mask. My classmates complained about strict parents or curfews, and I nodded, pretending I had the same. Inside, I burned with envy. I wanted someone to ground me, someone to care if I stayed out late. Instead, I walked home to an empty house that smelled of dust and abandonment. One afternoon, my friend Emily asked why my mom never picked me up anymore. I mumbled something about her being busy. Lying became second nature. I lied to teachers about why I missed assignments, lied to neighbors about where my mom had gone, lied to myself that she would come back soon. But nights were the hardest. I'd curl up under the blanket, staring at the ceiling, whispering, "Please come back, Mom." The only answer was the hollow echo of my own voice. Anger joined the loneliness after a few months. I pictured her laughing with Rick, sipping wine in some warm apartment while I ate cold ramen. I wanted to scream at her. How could you trade me for him? How could you choose love over your daughter? But she wasn't there to hear it. The little things cut the deepest. Birthdays with no candles. A scraped knee with no hand to hold mine. A school play where every other kid had parents cheering in the audience while my chair sat empty. Each moment was a reminder that I wasn't worth staying for. I thought about calling her. The phone sat heavy in my hand many nights. But the fear of rejection froze me. What if she told me outright she didn't want me anymore? That would break me more than silence. So I never dialed. Instead, I clung to fragments of her, the floral scarf she left behind, the recipe card in her handwriting. I'd press them to my face, pretending they were enough. Pretending I wasn't drowning in loneliness. By the end of that first year, I wasn't the same girl. Childhood had been stolen, replaced with a hard shell of independence. But beneath that shell was a wound that never fully healed. A wound shaped like Linda Miller, my mother, the woman who chose Rick Johnson over her own daughter. Even now, a decade later, that night sits in my memory like a scar. People say time heals, but time only taught me to hide the pain better. Never erased it. And yet, in that dark crucible of abandonment, something inside me hardened and reshaped. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of a fight for survival that would define my teenage years. The weeks after my mother left stretched into months and soon into years. What was supposed to be temporary began to feel permanent, though I could never admit that to myself out loud. I kept the house together as best as a 14-year-old could, but the cracks showed quickly. Bills piled on the counter, their red stamps screaming past due. I didn't know how to handle them, so I hid them in a drawer, as if out of sight meant out of existence. Groceries dwindled until dinner was just a slice of bread with peanut butter or instant noodles cooked in the same dented pot every night. Sometimes I skipped meals altogether, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. Hunger became a constant hum in my body. School felt like a different planet. Teachers noticed my slipping grades, but when they asked, I brushed them off with, "I'm fine." I couldn't bear the thought of them calling social services. I was terrified of being taken away, placed in foster care where strangers decided my future. As broken as my life was, it was mine and I wasn't ready to give it up. I took odd jobs wherever I could. Babysitting, mowing lawns, shoveling snow in the brutal Chicago winters. My fingers cracked in the cold, but I welcomed the pain because it meant I was doing something to survive. Each dollar earned was a lifeline. I'd walk into the grocery store with crumpled bills and coins, carefully counting as I placed cans of soup on the conveyor belt, praying I had enough. The loneliness, though, that was heavier than hunger. Nights were the hardest, when the house sat in silence, every creak of wood making me flinch. I'd leave the television on just to fill the emptiness with noise. Sometimes I fell asleep to sitcom laughter, pretending it was my own family's warmth. I tried reaching out to my mom once after nearly 2 years. I dialed her number with shaking hands. Rick answered. His voice was sharp, dismissive. "Linda's busy," he said. I just wanted to talk to her. "She'll call you back." She never did. That phone call broke something in me. I stopped hoping she would return. Instead, I built a wall inside, bricking over the tender places where hope had once lived. By the time I turned 16, I'd grown used to surviving on scraps of money and scraps of love. My friend Emily noticed the bags under my eyes, the way my clothes hung loose on me. One afternoon, she pulled me aside. "Rose, what's going on at home?" I wanted to tell her everything, to spill out the years of loneliness. But the words stuck in my throat. I forced a smile. "Nothing. Just tired." Emily didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Instead, she started slipping extra snacks into her bag at school and passing them to me quietly. "You forgot your lunch again," she'd whisper. That small kindness kept me afloat more than she ever knew. 17 came, and with it, the looming decision of whether I'd even graduate. My grades were shaky, but one teacher, Mr. Daniels, saw something in me. He pulled me aside after class one day. "You're smart, Rose. You just need stability. Don't let your situation define you." His words lingered in my head. For the first time, someone believed I was more than my struggles. I scraped through high school, working nights at a diner to keep the lights on at home. Grease clung to my clothes and exhaustion weighed me down, but I pushed forward. Each tip dropped into my apron pocket was proof I was still standing, still fighting. At 18, when most of my classmates celebrated graduation with proud parents cheering them on, I walked across the stage alone. No mother, no father, no family in the crowd. Just me, clutching a diploma with trembling hands, whispering, "I made it." I thought freedom would taste sweet once I was legally an adult. Instead, it tasted like fear. I was on my own fully now, with no safety net. College seemed impossible, I couldn't afford it. But survival had sharpened me, carved me into someone resourceful. I found a job as a receptionist at a small local company, answering phones and filing papers. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid just enough to keep me afloat. Looking back, I realized those years shaped me more than anything else ever could. They forced me to grow up fast, to become my own provider, my own parent, my own protector. But they also left scars, deep ones. Nights when I still woke up in a sweat, dreaming of an empty house. Days when a mother-daughter pair walking down the street made me ache with longing. It was in those years of scraping by, of clawing my way forward, that the seed of ambition took root. I didn't just want to survive anymore. I wanted to thrive. I wanted to build a life so solid, so untouchable that no one, especially my mother, could ever make me feel disposable again. Pain of those years never fully left, but it became fuel. And that fuel would soon ignite into something bigger than I ever imagined. At 19, I felt like I was standing at the bottom of a mountain no one believed I could climb. The receptionist job paid the bills, but barely. I lived in a cramped studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and a heater that rattled through the night. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and for the first time I wasn't surrounded by echoes of abandonment. Till I wanted more. Survival had taught me grit, but I wanted stability, security, and a future that didn't depend on scraping coins together. I wanted to rewrite my story. One evening, I stayed late at the office, typing up reports. That's when Charles Anderson, the company's founder, stopped by. He was a tall, silver-haired man in his 60s with a commanding presence softened by kindness. "Still here, Rose?" he asked, glancing at the clock. I shrugged, trying to get ahead on filing. He studied me for a moment, then smiled. "Ambition suits you. Don't lose it." That simple sentence stuck with me. Ambition suits you. For the first time, someone didn't just see me as the abandoned girl, they saw potential. Over the next months, I worked harder than ever. I volunteered for tasks outside my role, stayed late, and asked questions. Charles noticed. One afternoon, he called me into his office. "Rose, have you ever thought about business school?" I laughed. "I can't afford college, let alone business school." "Scholarships exist," he said. "And so does determination. You've got both." Felt impossible, but his belief in me lit a fire. I researched scholarships, grants, and community programs. Nights that were once filled with exhaustion at the diner turned into nights of studying, writing essays, and filling out applications. By the time I was 20, I had earned a full scholarship to a local business program. College was intimidating at first. Surrounded by students who came from stable homes and supportive families, I felt like an imposter. But I reminded myself daily, "You've survived worse than this. You belong here." And slowly I proved it. My grades soared, my professors praised my work ethic, and classmates started coming to me for help. It was during a group project that I met Michael Carter. He was quick-witted, with an easy smile that disarmed my guarded nature. Unlike others, he didn't press me about my past. He just treated me like I mattered. He became my anchor, pushing me when I doubted myself. "Rose, you've got this," he'd say before presentations, and somehow I always did. By 21, internships rolled in. I landed one at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. The office tower's glass walls reflected the Chicago skyline, and I remember standing in the lobby on my first day, whispering to myself, "You're not that abandoned kid anymore. You're building something." I poured myself into the work, blending creativity with the grit survival had taught me. Clients noticed. My supervisor noticed. Within a year, I was offered a full-time position, and the salary dwarfed anything I had ever made. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment with polished floors and sunlight streaming through the windows. For the first time in my life, I bought groceries without counting every penny. I cried the first night I filled my fridge. But success wasn't just financial. It was emotional. I was rewriting who Rose Miller was. No longer the forgotten daughter, I was a woman carving her place in the world. 22, I launched a small side project, an online platform connecting local artisans with customers. What started as a passion grew quickly. Within a year, the platform was generating revenue. I reinvested everything, and soon it blossomed into a thriving business. I worked days at the firm and nights building my dream, fueled by the determination to never be powerless again. Charles Anderson, who had become more of a mentor than a boss, called me into his office again one day. "I hear your side project is gaining traction," he said with a knowing smile. I nodded nervously. "It's growing faster than I expected." He leaned forward. "Then stop expecting small. Think big. Think legacy." His words shifted everything. I left the firm within months, diving full-time into my business. The risk was terrifying, but the reward was sweeter than I imagined. By 23, my platform had expanded nationwide. Investors called. Partnerships formed. Suddenly, I was not just surviving, I was thriving, building a company worth millions. I should have felt triumphant, but there were nights when I sat in my elegant apartment, staring at the city lights and wondered, would my mom be proud of me? Then I reminded myself, she had her chance to be part of this journey and she chose Rick. 24, the life I had once dreamed of was mine. I drove a car I loved, lived in a condo overlooking the skyline, and employed dozens of people whose livelihoods depended on my vision. People looked at me with admiration, but few knew the road I had crawled through to get here. And then, just when I had nearly buried the memory of her, Linda Miller reappeared. It was a crisp autumn morning. My assistant knocked on my office door. "There's a woman here to see you," says she's family. I frowned. Family? I had none. "Her name?" I asked. "Linda Miller." My heart stopped. 10 years had passed since that night she walked out, and now she was here in my building asking to see me. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and whispered to myself, "You're not that broken girl anymore." But inside, my hands trembled. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face her. Yet part of me knew this confrontation was inevitable. The mother who had left me at 14 was back, and this time she was the one needing something. I told my assistant to let her in. The words left my mouth steady, but inside I was shaking. The office door opened slowly, and there she was, Linda Miller, my mother. 10 years older, lines etched deeper across her face, her once bright hair dulled into tired strands. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her choices had pressed her down. "Rose," she breathed, as if saying my name was both relief and regret. I stood behind my desk, arms crossed tightly across my chest. "It's been a long time." Her eyes flickered around the office, taking in the polished shelves, the framed certificates, the city view. Pride and envy warred in her expression. She finally looked at me again, her eyes watery. "You've done so well for yourself." I wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in my throat. "You wouldn't know. You weren't there to see it." She flinched. Silence stretched heavy between us. Finally, she stepped closer. "I made mistakes, Rose. Rick, he wasn't who I thought he was. Things fell apart. I lost everything." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I realized she wasn't just here to say sorry. She was here because she needed something. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Her lip trembled. "I need your help. I'm living in a shelter. I can't find steady work. I thought maybe you could forgive me. Maybe you could support me." There it was, plain and raw. The woman who once told me I was strong enough to manage alone was now asking me to save her. 1,000 memories rushed back. Empty birthdays, lonely dinners, nights crying into my pillow. I remembered dialing her number only to hear Rick's dismissive voice. I remembered the silence of the house that had swallowed me whole. And now she wanted help. I walked around my desk slowly, stopping just a few feet from her. "Do you have any idea what you did to me?" My voice shook, not with weakness, but with 10 years of buried pain clawing its way out. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know. I was selfish. I thought I was choosing love, but I destroyed you instead. Please, Rose, I've paid for it every day since. Let me make it right." I searched her face, looking for the mother I once knew, the woman who brushed my hair before school, who kissed scraped knees. But all I saw was a stranger, broken and desperate. You can't make it right, I said quietly. You can't give me back the years you stole. You can't erase the loneliness, the hunger, the fear. You can't undo any of it. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. The distance between us yawned like a canyon. I'm sorry, she whispered again. Sorry doesn't feed a 14-year-old girl, I snapped. The words echoed through the office, sharp enough to make her flinch. She sank into the chair across from me, shoulders slumped. I thought you'd be happy to see me. I thought success might have softened you. Softened me. The irony twisted in my chest. My success was built on the fire of her abandonment. Every late night, every risk, every victory, I had chased them because I needed to prove I wasn't disposable. She hadn't softened me. She had hardened me into steel. You thought wrong, I said. She sobbed quietly, the sound both pitiful and infuriating. I turned to the window, staring out at the skyline I had claimed for myself. I don't hate you, I said finally. But I can't forgive you either. Not now. Maybe not ever. Her breath hitched. Please, Rose. Just give me a chance. I'm your mother. The word felt foreign on her lips. Mother. A title she had abandoned long ago. You gave that up when you walked out the door, I replied. We sat in silence, the distance between us wider than any decade. I thought about offering her money, a way to ease her suffering without letting her back into my life. But then I realized that would only trap me in her orbit again, a place I had fought too hard to escape. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, almost too calm. I hope you find peace, Linda. Truly. But you won't find it here. Not with me. Her sobs deepened, but I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. Comforting her would mean betraying the 14-year-old girl who had cried herself to sleep alone. Through a long silence, she rose slowly from the chair. She looked at me one last time, eyes pleading for something I couldn't give. Then she turned and walked out. The door closed softly behind her, but the echo of it rang louder than any slam. I stood there, trembling, my chest tight. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was an ache that success couldn't cure. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights again. For years I had dreamed of her return, fantasized about what I would say. But when it finally happened, it wasn't the reunion I had once hoped for. It was too late. Too much had been broken. And yet, in the hollow space she left behind once more, I realized something. I had survived her absence before, and I could survive her presence, or lack of it, again. This time, I wasn't the helpless 14-year-old girl. I was Rose Miller, a woman who had risen from the ashes of abandonment. When Linda walked out of my office, the silence she left behind was deafening. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, my heart thundering with emotions I couldn't name. Part of me wanted to run after her, to demand answers I had been denied for 10 years. But the stronger part, the part that had grown out of loneliness and hunger, told me to stay still. The truth was simple, it was too late. That night, I went home and sat by the window of my high-rise apartment. The city lights glittered below, thousands of stories unfolding in every glowing window. I thought of my 14-year-old self, sitting in that cold, quiet house, praying for my mom to come back. She never had then, and when she finally did a decade later, it wasn't as a mother returning, it was as a beggar. I poured a glass of wine, something I'd grown to enjoy in moments of reflection, and let the memories wash over me. The birthdays spent alone. The phone call Rick answered. The weight of bills I couldn't pay. The gnawing fear of being invisible. My success had been forged in those fires, and though I had triumphed, the scars remained. A few days later, Michael stopped by. He'd been my friend since college, steady and reliable, and he had a way of grounding me when I drifted into the past too deeply. We sat on the couch, the city skyline stretching behind us. She came back, I told him quietly. He raised his brows. Your mom? I nodded. She asked for help. Wanted forgiveness. I told her it was too late. Michael studied me for a long moment. Do you regret it? I stared into my wine glass, watching the liquid swirl. I don't know. Part of me feels guilty, like I should have done more. But another part, I swallowed hard. Another part thinks she doesn't deserve me anymore. He leaned forward. Rose, you're not obligated to heal her wounds just because she gave you life. She left you when you needed her most. You don't owe her your success. His words settled deep inside me. I had been wrestling with guilt, but hearing someone else say it out loud made it easier to breathe. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wondered where she went after leaving my office. Was she back at the shelter? Was Rick still in her life, or had he abandoned her the way she abandoned me? Questions swirled, but I knew answers wouldn't bring me peace. Weeks passed and life moved on. My company continued to grow, investors pushed for expansion, and my calendar filled with meetings and flights. On the surface, everything was perfect. But late at night, when the world quieted, I thought about Linda's face, aged, worn, desperate. I replayed her whisper, "I'm your mother." But she wasn't, not really. A mother doesn't leave her child to fend for herself at 14. A mother doesn't choose a man over her daughter. She may have been my biological parent, but the title of mother had long since been stripped away. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, I found myself writing in a journal I had started during my survival years. Back then, it had been filled with fear and longing. Now it was filled with gratitude and determination. I wrote, "She came back. But she came back for the wrong reasons. Not for love, not for me, only because she needed. That's not family. That's desperation. And I won't let desperation rewrite my story." That was the moment clarity washed over me. I didn't hate Linda. I didn't even truly despise her. What I felt was finality. The bond we once shared had been severed, and though I mourned it, I also accepted it. Months later, I heard through a distant acquaintance that Linda had left the shelter and was trying to rebuild her life in a small town outside the city. I didn't reach out. I didn't send money. But I didn't wish her harm either. She had her path and I had mine. One morning, as I stood in front of a crowd delivering a keynote speech about resilience in business, I caught my reflection in the glass podium. My hair neatly styled, my suit sharp, my voice steady. I looked like the woman I had always wanted to become. And in that moment, I knew that my mother's absence had shaped me more than her presence ever could have. I ended that speech with words I hadn't planned. Life doesn't always give us the family we want. Sometimes it gives us the family we need, and sometimes that family is simply ourselves. Never underestimate the power of survival. It can turn wounds into wisdom. The applause roared, but what mattered most was the calm in my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel anger when I thought of Linda. I felt acceptance. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. And mine had led me here, successful, strong, unbroken. As I walked off the stage, Michael met me with a proud smile. "You finally let it go," he said. I nodded. "Yeah, I think I did." The truth was, forgiveness wasn't something I owed her. Forgiveness was something I gave myself. By choosing not to carry her burden any longer, I had freed myself. And though Linda Miller might always live somewhere in the shadows of my story, she no longer controlled the ending. That belonged to me. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel for more stories like this video and please share to your loved ones.